Wes Mussio, welcome.
Thank you very much for having me.
My pleasure. You are a lawyer, and you've been digging into the speculation tax, and you've been finding some interesting things, especially when it comes to estates and wills. What are some of those things that made you go, oh my gosh, if you weren't aware of this, ouch?
Yeah, the thing is, I do estate litigation and a lot of estate work now. Our firm has quite a few files, and the thing we noticed is a lot of people are tax planning and estate planning by putting multiple family members or people on title of a property. And so under the new system, if you're not living in the house or have another exemption, you're actually going to have to pay speculation taxes, even though you're never intending to speculate. You're intending to plan for your life, basically, in time of death.
Okay, run that by me. How does that work? So a lot of people are doing estate planning, and they'll put a family member or something on the title, won't they, as a way of making that transition a little bit easier and smoother post the passing of the matriarch or patriarch of the family.
Yeah, there's a couple reasons why you do that. One is you put somebody on title as a joint tenant, and they may not be a family member, but you want to give them the house on your death, because otherwise, if it goes through the estate, then the family can fight it. So that's one way you give it to your friend or your buddy or whatnot. The other way is you want to have your children or your mother or father on title in case you die, because then the property will automatically transfer to you as joint tenant, and it doesn't go through probate. Now, probate has got probate taxes. It's got a 210-day waiting period after you get probate, which, by the way, probate takes at least 3 or 4 months in the courts to get. So you're looking at a 1-year delay. So people are historically doing a lot of tax planning by putting people on title that don't even live at the property. And that's where the problem goes, because you go to you have to now claim an exemption as an owner of the property, and if you're not there, you're not living there, you're not renting there, you live in another property, you're paying taxes.
So if you're not paying attention to that and your name is on title on somewhere else and you don't claim the exemption, you're going to get taxed.
Exactly. Like the point is you can't claim an exemption if you're a friend, family member that's not living in the premise, and the person that is actually living there is the one that wanted you to get on title.
So they can't even claim the exemption.
Cannot claim the exemption. So what happens is in that situation, you've got, say there's 2 people on title, you're paying 50% of the speculation tax. And I don't think the provincial government was thinking that one through when they put in the exemptions, because it's obviously a major problem, I think, for a lot of estate planning people. And I can tell you that estate planning is a very, very common thing for lawyers and for the industry. So there's going to be a lot of people that are captured by this problem.
What if you happen to have forgotten that you're on title somewhere, or you're out of the province, or you don't? Would they even mail you the papers?
Well, the point, they probably would mail them to you, but the problem is you might not realize that you're on title, because sometimes these are done, in secret or whatnot. So then suddenly you get a major tax bill.
And you're going, what the heck's this for?
Yes, and that's never been the intention, I don't believe, of this tax. Is supposed to be dealing with empty homes and speculation, but you're not speculating when you're tax planning and estate planning, I wouldn't think.
What happens after the person passes away and there's nobody living in the house?
Well, the way it works is if somebody dies, let's say they die in 2019, there's an exemption, an automatic exemption for 2019 and 2020, and then after that, taxes are paid. But the difficulty with that is probate takes years to go through the system, because you've got such big delays in court and doing all the paperwork. So there's going to be a lot of probates and estates are going to be captured by this speculation tax, because it's not uncommon to have a several-year period before the house is sold and the estate is wound up. So you're definitely going to get some estates paying speculation tax.
And is there any exemption to that? You get 2-3 years out past the no?
No, the only exemption is in the year the person dies, and then 1 year thereafter. And if you say you inherit a house, like automatically, that's why joint tenancy, you inherited it. It's only in the year that you inherit it. In other words, say your loved one dies in 2019, you have to be living in there by 2020, or you're paying the speculation tax, because or you meet another exemption like renting it out or something. So there's a tight timeline, and unfortunately with estate litigation and estate matters, very often these houses are held up in the, until everything's wound up. For example, there's a certificate of pending litigation against the property. You can't sell it. It's sitting there for a couple of years till the litigation goes ahead.
Because there's a dispute over the estate.
And then somebody's paying the speculation tax because you can't sell it, because you only have that one extra year after death to wind up the estate. And I don't, the problem is I see is that perhaps the government never expected this to happen, but they didn't look it through and think it through of all the possible exemptions that are needed.
Isn't that their responsibility to do that?
I would think so. I mean, they should have spoken to people like myself that do estate litigation, and they would have realized that they've got a bunch of problems in terms of the way they were proceeding forward, unless, of course, they want to tax people like that, but I don't think that's the case.
Well, let's hope not. Because the other thing that I think about, okay, so my parent is dying, and now all of a sudden I'm supposed to also remember that I have to apply for the exemption on their home, in addition to everything else, because this tax is set up that you are guilty until you prove yourself innocent.
Exactly, and the problem is if you have your name on your mother's property and you're living in another place in Vancouver, you're paying speculation tax because you can't claim principal residency on two places. So basically you have mom sitting there, she doesn't want to have a renter in there, you can't hit any other exemptions, you're paying half the speculation tax by having your name on the property. And so you can make a choice, I guess. You can get your name off there, and then you have to go through the probate problems, or you just eat it and start paying the tax, which is probably not palatable for most people.
So I had the Minister of Housing in here a couple of weeks ago, and she said, oh, it's quite simple. You just go online. It doesn't take much. You just fill it out. Well, I went online to take a look at it. It doesn't look simple to me, and if you're trying to understand what these exemptions are, as I was doing research in advance of you coming in, I'm starting to try and read what is and what isn't exempt, and it was mind-numbing, mind-boggling. I can't imagine that when you're in the process of going through all of that. So it's not just that you're going to apply for that exemption. You're going to have to engage somebody who actually knows what they're doing to make sure that you do it right.
Right, and that, I guess, helps lawyers like me because we'll get more business.
Yeah, but it incurs additional costs.
Exactly, but the point, I think the bigger point is that if you look at the website, and I've gone through it quite a few times because I have to instruct clients about the problem that we've created for them by putting people on title. So I've gone through it, and there's a number of examples that are internally inconsistent with other factors, like the government has put in, okay, this example, but it actually doesn't apply. So somebody that wrote that has not really gone through and reread it and had several people look at the website to make sure it's accurate, because I don't think it's even accurate in some regards. Like some of those examples are not correct.
It's scary, isn't it?
Yeah, I mean, it's an unintended consequence. So you have the government saying, okay, 32,000 people, give or take, are going to be impacted. But I think the number is going to be vastly higher than that, they'll find. And then either they're going to accept all this extra revenue, or they're going to have to do a lot more exemptions right away. Because that's the problem with having a tax system like that, where people are guilty until proven innocent. So rather than doing it the other way around, where you're actually trying to pick out who should be paying it. Mm-hmm. So in other words, what you need to do is come up with all the possible exemptions that you want, and they haven't done that yet. So there's going to be checks and balances coming out come March 1st when people are starting to see their tax bill come in.
And so anybody that potentially is on any piece of property because they have a family member or a friend that wants to pass on property, or if you've had a family member who is about to pass away or has, what's your number one bit of advice when it comes to the speculation tax? Well,
you're going to have to pay. You don't have an exemption. You're going to have to pay, or you're going to have to reverse what you did on the on this tax planning or estate planning. And using a personal example, we're about to do that with my my mother-in-law, having the three kids put on the title. But now we would never do that because all three children have residences in the Lower Mainland that would be that they have to claim primary residency over. So if we put the three children on title, that I was actually in the process of doing, and now you have to reverse it because otherwise you're paying 3/4 of the property tax or the speculation tax.
So what had seemed prudent in the past, it no longer is.
And so then the end result is now I've been the will be changed because I'm now going to be the executor because we actually have to formally go through probate because that's the unfortunate part. So then I've been put on as the executor for that reason because we can't do the other, estate planning venture, which most people are currently doing in this industry.
And I think that it's also important to remember that if you filed this year, you've got to make claims and go through the whole process again next year and the year after and the year after and the year after. So once you're on title, you have to pay attention to this on an annual basis.
And you don't want to cheat because if you are caught cheating, that's inappropriate. And so you have to be honest. And there's going to be a lot of people that honestly can't find an exemption and will have to pay taxes. And it's just most unfair. I mean, from my perspective, I would think that if you have one owner of the property that's living in the property, everyone should be exempted. But unfortunately, the government didn't go that direction. So they're making each individual property owner claim exemption or pay. So if you got four people on title and one person's living there, you're paying 3/4 of the speculation tax on that property.
It seems to me to be a bit of a messy business. Thanks for coming in and sharing this with us.
No problem. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Thank you for tuning in. Join us next time when we dig into Vancouver's industrial land crisis, a crisis that could have a dramatic impact on the economy and jobs. I'm Stuart McNish. Thanks for joining us on Housing Matters, the Vancouver Real Estate Show. Now, just before I go, I'd like to encourage you once again to tune into In the House with Mike Smith and Rob Shaw. And if you're a fan of the Canucks or merely just interested in the team, join Paul Chapman for White Towel, available on Apple Podcasts, VancouverSun.com, and theprovince.com. See you next time.